Hello everyone and welcome to the HEX WARS channel. My name is Marcin and in this clip I'll tell you everything you need to know about the game HEX WARS. We'll start with the core rules, explaining all the mechanics of the game. Then we'll go through the turn sequence step by step to finally spend some time talking about how to win in HEX WARS. So, without further ado, let's jump in! HEX WARS is a strategy board game depicting a conflict between two rival factions, the Kingdom, represented by the color blue, and Wild Tribes, represented by the bloody red. Leaders of these two forces have finally decided to resolve their rivalry for good by dominating the old continent. HEX WARS is a game for 2 players, and a standard game should take between 30 and 45 minutes. Let's take a look at the core rules of the game. We'll start with the hexes themselves, then move on to the dice, followed by the orders. We'll conclude this section with a look at several types of cards in the game. Hexes. Let's start with them. Our main board is composed of hexagon fields. Both players will begin with the starting hexes in their own faction's color already on the board. And during the game, they will expand into more and more regions of the map, which inevitably will result in attack on opponents' positions. The balance between the forces will swing back and forth, while the armies will win back some regions of the map or submit to the other side's domination. On the board, you'll also find gray hexes. They are terrain pieces, which will limit the army's mobility and provide some protection against enemies' attacks. One of the main mechanics of the game is the roll of 10 dice, or 10d6. Each turn starts with both players rolling 10 dice of their faction's color and looking for any roll results of 4 or more. These results are successes and will be used later on during the turn. In this example, red player rolled 6 results of 4 or more, so 6 successes, while the blue player has in total 7 successes. Don't worry, if your 10d6 roll is not that great, there are plenty of rules and effects that can help you out by allowing rerolls or modifying the die results, including mulligan-like rule called bad luck protection. Let's spend some time and talk about the orders. They truly are the clue and the core mechanic of the gameplay. Both players have the same set of 6 orders at their disposal. Each order has its cost, expressed in the number of successes that need to be spent, and its effect. The most important rule about the orders is that the players can spend the multiplication of the order's cost to multiply its effect. In other words, if you spend 3 times the cost of an order, you'll get 3 times its effect. We'll go over all 6 orders one by one to see what they do and how they affect what's going on the board. Starting with Attack Order. Its cost is 1. Its effect is to take over 1 adjacent hex. In this example, the blue player activates their attack order by spending 3 successes and taking over 3 adjacent hexes. Next up is the Charge Order, with the cost of 2 and the effect of allowing us to take over 2 hexes in a straight line. We can see here that the blue player has paid 4 successes in total to charge in 2 different directions and take over 4 hexes. Remember that you cannot charge through terrain hexes or the hexes that are already yours. That's why this charge is not allowed, likewise this one or this one. Third is the Shoot Order. It costs 3 successes and its effect is to take over 1 hex in a range of 2. As a result, this shooting order can take over any of these hexes. However, let's keep in mind that we cannot shoot at terrain or our own hexes. In this example, the blue player decided to spend 6 successes and take over these 2 hexes. The main objective of these 3 orders is to get more of our hexes on the board. We can take over neutral, unoccupied hexes, but also enemy ones, by replacing their hexes with our own. We can even take over a hex with the opponent's order on it. The consequences for the opponent player are quite dire. The attacked order is removed from the board and cannot be activated this turn. To the rescue comes the fourth order, Fortify. This order's cost is 0, which means it's a passive order. It works no matter if it's face up or face down. Its effect is quite simple. It protects the hex it's on from any attempt of destroying or taking over it. That's why, in this example, shooting, attacking or charging the hex with Fortify order will fail and have no effect. Note that the Fortify order stays at the board until the end of the turn, protecting its hex the whole time. The fifth order is a bit peculiar. Sabotage has cost of 2, but it can be used for any of its 2 effects. Either to move a terrain hex by 1 to a free space, or to destroy an enemy hex without an order, but destroy it, not take over it. Both of these effects have a global range and can be combined together. Here we see a blue player spending 6 successes to move a terrain hex by 1 space and destroy 2 enemy hexes. Last but not least, we have the Harvest order. It costs 4 successes and allows us to gain as many victory points as there are adjacent friendly hexes. Important note, Harvest order is the only one in the game that cannot benefit from multiplication rule. This means we cannot spend 8 successes to harvest our crops twice. Let's check these 2 situations. In both cases, the blue player pays 4 successes to activate the harvest order, but in the example on the left, they gain only 3 victory points, while in the example on the right, they get the maximum amount of points, which is 6. The game uses several types of cards. Let's start with the ones you'll use the most, which are tactic cards. Every player will start the game with 8 tactic cards and use exactly 1 each turn. Since we're playing 8 turns, that means at the end of the 8th and final turn, we'll use our last tactic card. If it comes to what the tactic cards do, their effect can vary, but usually they contain a small bonus for the turn that the player can use to their benefit. It can be an effect modifying the dice results. It can help us defend better, allow us to draw additional cards, or affect some of the hexes on the board. Next, we have season cards. Before the game starts, the players will randomly choose 4 seasons during which the war will be fought. The seasons will determine how the victory points are gained during the turn, usually based on what's happening on the board. By taking over enemy hexes, hexes that are next to terrains, or that are located in a specific place on the board. Note that each season lasts 2 turns, which means that both players will have a chance to be the first player, so to have initiative, during the same season. Now, let's talk about characters you can find on leader and advisor cards. These are heroes of the old continent, usually brave warriors or cunning tacticians that will help your faction dominate the opposing force. The leader is the general commanding your army. Both players choose their leader at the start of the game based on what strategy they want to choose for them. Each leader has a unique ability that alters one of the key rules of the game. For instance, modifying how one of the orders work, adding some extra defense, or giving you much needed information on opponent's plans. The leader also provides additional utility in form of strength tokens, which can be used for a single reroll or redrawing your tactic cards. Additionally, depending on your leader's influence, the number of your starting hexes will change, and also the wisdom characteristic will allow you to choose your starting hand of tactic cards out of a bigger pool. Your general is a proud, well-known warrior and doesn't hide from the battle. Your advisor, on the other hand, prefers to stay in the shadows, whispering to your ear what are the best moves and how you should plan your attacks in advance. In the game turns, the advisor card remains hidden from your opponent and gives you additional victory points depending on how well you fulfilled the advisor's secret objective at the end of the game. This objective usually revolves around controlling specific hexes on the board. For example, the ones on the edge, in your opponent's starting territory, or completely surrounded by friendly hexes. Each of the advisors can be disclosed at any time. The controlling player will get a small bonus, but in exchange the advisor will be revealed and the opponent will be now able to counter our endgame objective. And there you have it, all the core rules and mechanics of HEX WARS. In order to use them properly, however, we need to know how the game plays out step by step. Let's take a look at the turn sequence. A standard game of HEX WARS will last for 8 turns. During every turn, the players will go through 6 phases. First, during the preparation phase, players will roll their 10 dice and count successes. Secondly, during the tactic phase, both players choose their tactic for this turn and place them face down. The order phase consists of both players placing their 3 orders on their hexes, alternately starting with the player with initiative. 2 of the orders placed on the board have to be face down, and 1 order has to be face up. Next comes the reveal phase. Both players reveal their tactic card at the same time. If there is an immediate effect, it has to be applied right away. Fifth phase, the action phase, is really the main one and will take the majority of the time spending during each turn. One by one, starting with who has initiative, the players activate the orders they place during the third phase while using the successes gained at the beginning of the turn. Let's take a look at this example. Since the blue player has initiative, they start by activating their first order, which is Harvest. They pay 4 successes and gain 6 victory points, since there are 6 friendly hexes adjacent to the order. Next, the red player activates their order but turning it face up, revealing that it's a shoot order and spending 3 successes for a single shot. They target an enemy hex with an order, replacing the hex with red one and removing the opponent's order from the board. For blue player, there is only one thing left to do: activate the remaining order, which is Charge. They spend their last 4 successes to send out 2 units of cavalry and charge in 2 different directions. Red player continues by revealing the charge order of their own and spending 2 successes to take over 2 hexes in a straight line. Since the blue player doesn't have any orders left, the red player activates his last order, Sabotage, and after some consideration, they decide to destroy one of the enemy's hexes. Finally, we arrive at the cleanup phase. The initiative token is flipped over to indicate the change of the first player, while also moving forward, progressing to the next turn. The orders go back to the players, the dice pool is reset, and the active tactic cards are moved to the used cards pile. Alright, now that we know all the core rules of the game and how the turn sequence looks like, we can now try to answer a very important question. How do I win the whole thing? Let's take a look. It seems pretty easy at first. The only thing to do is to have more victory points than your opponent. But of course, since they're trying to do the same thing, it's actually quite complicated and requires a bit of a know-how. There are 4 sources of victory points. The main one are the seasons. They will remain our primary source of victory points However, each game will have a random set of seasons, and gaining points in one of them can be much more difficult than in the other. In easier setups, players will get around 25 victory points, while in others, it could be challenging to get even 10 points. Next, we have the harvest order. Getting 6 points each turn is the dream. However, it will not be that easy, since the enemy will try to get in our way. Additionally, sacrificing successes to harvest instead of expanding means that our territory will shrink very quickly. Usually, players tend to execute between 2 and 4 harvests each game, which should give them between 10 and 15 victory points. Third way of getting points is our advisor. At the end of the game, we'll gain additional points if we fulfilled our advisor's secret objective. Getting around 8 points shouldn't be a problem, but a skillful general will earn as much as 12 or even 15 points at the end. Lastly, there are several cards in the game that can get you small amounts of victory points. This can be leaders' abilities or some tactic cards. They're a nice addition, but usually you should not count on getting more than a couple of points. Okay, let's conclude the video with several tips and tricks on how to optimize your gameplay and avoid beginners' mistakes. The seasons can make a huge difference in your whole game strategy. While choosing your leader, planning your moves, or trying to anticipate what the opponent will do, always consider the current but also future seasons. If the fogs are next on the seasons track, try not to take over the hexes on the edge of the board and leave them for the future moves. If you see clear sky coming up, restrain yourself from spending strength tokens unless absolutely necessary. Sudden hits goes very well with Milosh as your leader and tactics such as Scorched Earth. Setting up big harvest turns is a very effective strategy. Try to plan your attacks during the turn in which you don't have initiative, so at the end of such a turn, you'll have a perfect harvest spot. That way, next turn you can start your orders with a harvest for 6 points without the risk of a pesky charge or a shoot orders destroying your plans. Since we're talking about victory points, playing to please your advisor can often be a decisive factor at the game's end. Always keep in mind what you have to aim at in order to get as many bonus points as possible. Using the disclosure ability can be tempting and sometimes necessary, but try to think of it as a last resort. Hand management in HEX WARS plays quite a big role. We can't always foresee what the situation on the board will look like, but making sure we don't keep cards that will not be useful at the later stages of the game will often give us an edge to stay on the winning side. On the other hand, keeping cards like Heard Prayers, Delayed Gratification, or Forced Migration for the last turn will basically mean we don't get any of their benefits. Last but not least, let's talk about the leaders and their effect on the whole game. Each of them is unique. They can and should influence your decisions regarding the strategy you plan on following during the game. This includes choosing the right tactics, placing the terrain hexes in the right spots, or making sure the advisor's objective is aligned with our plan for the game. Let's consider Black Knight as our leader. He requires a board with as few terrains as possible to make the free hex charges easier. He can use tactics such as light cavalry, surprise attack, or scorched earth. An advisor that can benefit from his ability can be Shoar or Bork. And that's it. That's the end of the video. Now you know everything there is to know about the game HEX WARS. I highly encourage you to check out the game's Facebook and Instagram page and also Discord server. You can expect more videos like that with gameplays, streams from board game events and development updates. In the meantime, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye!